Hi, I'm Dr. Kimberly Moore, host of the Envision More Workforce Insight podcast. Join us as we explore workforce and leadership through an innovation lens with leaders from across the country in every industry. Whether you're in education trying to crack the code for workforce or industry seeking to address your workforce talent strategy, or maybe you just need to be inspired, we've got you covered. Tune in, save us as a favorite, and let's innovate together. For tuning in to another episode of Workforce Insight. I am so glad to be here with another amazing guest. And you may remember, listeners, that you're out there, that Workforce Insight really is about bringing together, whether you're not in the nonprofit space, education, government, or private sector, bringing those all together, because you know what? There is an intersection, and we talk about that intersection and how we really do need each other in making this all work. So I've brought in, and you've had a chance to listen to some great speakers along the way. That's not going to stop. It's going to continue throughout. The great thing about it, too, just to add, is that these are speakers from across the country. So bringing their different perspectives. And I guess just to go ahead and level set for today's conversation, we have, oh my goodness, Rebecca. I know about Becky Corbin, and the world knows her about Becky Corbin. Becky, it's fantastic to have you here today and just to be able to talk with you and share some of your amazing insight. But I think, for our listeners, for those who may not know, and I guess you've probably been under a rock if you haven't heard just the work that she's doing. But could you share a bit about, your journey and becoming CEO of this amazing organization that I'm going to let you spill the beans on?
Okay, well, Dr. Moore, Kimberly, Kim, my friend and colleague, it's great to be here. And it's funny, we think about our journeys, and I think about it. A friend of mine described it as sort of that bar on your cell phone. Like, how much time do you have left? You've got, the first 25%, I think, is all of us jumping into our career. But I'll focus maybe on the last 10 years, which it was really my journey with NACCE, which NACCE, if people aren't aware, stands for the National Association for Community College Entrepreneurship. So it's an educational association. It's about 23 years old. So I came to it when it was sort of, I would say, in a young adult phase, and we've grown together the last 10 years. I got very interested in the topic of entrepreneurship and the connection to workforce development and philanthropy when I was a doctoral student at Wilmington University in Delaware. And it was just a life-changing experience for me. So as I was finishing up my doctoral dissertation, I was interviewing community colleges and found out about this organization called NACCE that I now have the privilege to lead. So it's been an interesting journey. I've learned a lot, and I keep learning. I try to practice entrepreneurial mindset. So everything I try doesn't always work out, but I think I'm just happy that I meet fellow leaders like you on the travels. It's been a wonderful ride so far.
It absolutely has been a wonderful ride in so many different respects. I can't even think of the number of people that you have touched because, again, I've had exposure to NACCE literally the entire length of your placement there, as long as you've been there. So it's been a great one. And when I think about NACCE, as we'll affectionately refer to it, because we all are NACCE, that, NACCE is really deeply committed to promoting the entrepreneurial mindset and innovative action in community college. What do you think are some of the key ingredients of skills needed to be an impactful leader in this space?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think during different times you need different skills, but there are some things, as you know, in the leadership role that you have now and in the past, you really need to be able to be comfortable with ambiguity. And I think that can't be overstated. If we all lived through the pandemic and trying to use new tools, I think, being comfortable with ambiguity, really understanding who you are. I spend a lot of time with self-reflection, and, we come into challenges in our lives where it causes you to question, at times, am I doing the right thing? Am I headed in the right direction? And I think if you really commit to being a lifelong learner and really seeking out guidance, honestly, when you need it. And I've done that in the past. In fact, I think I've done that with you. We've helped each other in certain junctures. And I think having a circle of trusted people around you that will be there not only when you succeed, but when you stumble and when you question yourself is, I think those are some of the most important things that we can do as leaders.
You are so accurate on that. And I just think about even with my own journey, as you mentioned, that having that circle, it's critical. And having that level of awareness. And I know every time that we've had a chance to talk, you always talk about reflection. So I think that's just so, that's one of the great takeaways that I hear from you each time. So, we think about that as a leader, but the great work that you're doing at NACCE and, touches and impacts an entire college or institution. So, what do you think are some of the key attributes of NACCE member colleges? And for those of you that are out there, if you're not a member yet, then you certainly need to be clicking away and jumping onto the NACCE bandwagon. But what do you think are some of the key attributes that you see with those member colleges?
It's a great question. So, in the universe of community colleges in the United States, there's about 1,100. And our members, we have about, in the 350s, 360s. It's always a little bit rolling. In addition, we have a number of historically Black colleges and universities that have joined us through a grant program. And what I see at these colleges is I see people that really want to lean into innovation and entrepreneurship as a mindset. So they're maybe more typically not people and leaders who are saying, we've always done it this way and, we don't
Right.
need to change. I think there are people that recognize that change is a part of life, but
Yeah.
nobody knows how to do it perfectly. So at NACCE, our model is we try to co-create together. So we try to come to it aspirationally as authentic people with both strengths and weaknesses, and how can we look at some of the challenges in higher education and really turn them into opportunities. And I think that's what makes the NACCE member probably stand out amongst the whole group of 1,100 colleges.
I love that. Just embracing opportunity. And we know with, entrepreneurship, it just really does, hold immense potential when it comes to economic growth and what it can drive and even fostering innovation. So, how do you envision these skills contributing to the development and preparation of students that are actually attending these institutions, as well as, how does it encourage or spur, workforce and economic development growth in the community? So, one part being the students, what does it do there to foster that? And then the other part, workforce and economic development in communities.
Yeah, so I think at the core, my belief being in this space for a while now, before I joined NACCE, I was the vice president of institutional advancement for a community college in New Jersey. So my role was really externally focused. It was the foundation, it was workforce, it was career services. And I didn't even really know in those early days, 15 years ago, a lot about entrepreneurial mindset. But when I first read the book "Who Owns the Ice House" and got exposed, as many of us did, to foundationally what entrepreneurship is all about, it occurred to me that every single student, every single employee at a community college, every person, honestly, everywhere, could benefit from entrepreneurial mindset. And what I mean by that is it teaches you to focus on what we call your bird in hand assets. So you're not a complainer. You're not going to say, I don't have enough of this. I can't do this, because you're flipping that. You're training your brain to say, what opportunities do I have in front of me? And then you're going to engage in an affordable loss conversation with yourself. What can I afford to invest in terms of time, money, maybe reputation sometimes, in kind of moving either my idea forward, which might be a small business, but it also might be working for somebody else, where I just want to be a very entrepreneurial thinker and I'm going to be a solution solver. The third step of entrepreneurial mindset that I love is the crazy quilt. So to me, this is really a call out for equity, right? Because you and I have a lot in common. So if we're going to be starting a new venture, we're going to benefit ourselves from maybe including other people that don't have a similar higher ed experience. They might be
Right.
people that come at it from a completely different angle. Maybe they're brand new in their career, or maybe they're much older than we are. And
Yeah.
so I think thinking in terms of how can I learn from others? How can I partner effectively with others? And just the two other points on entrepreneurial mindset are the lemonade principle. So we've all endeavored in areas where things didn't go well, but if we are practicing that principle, we're learning from things that didn't work out well, and we're going back. We're not giving up. We're going to say, okay, that was a valuable lesson learned. I might make
Right.
another mistake, but I'm going to try not to make that same mistake. And then finally, the pilot in the plane, which is really what we were speaking about earlier as leaders, is really that agency over yourself. Like, you
Yeah.
can go through stormy times in life where it seems like things are not going the way that you want them to go. But
Uh-huh.
what do you have control over? You have control over how you take care of yourself, how you take care of people in your orbit, and what you spend your time doing, and how you feed your mind. Like, are you,
Exactly.
engaging with things that lift you up and make you laugh and make you a better person? Or are you kind of swimming in sort of a sea of negativity? So I think that's why I'm a big believer that entrepreneurial mindset is really for everyone.
It really is. And I guess for, again, for those listeners, because we position Workforce Insight as that go-to place for all of these different stakeholder groups, what would you say for the workforce and economic development side of that question, though? How does what we're doing and what you're doing at NACCE even spur and encourage some growth there?
Yeah, and I mean, you are much more expert on workforce than I am, but I've always touched it a little bit, and really have understood that in the United States we have this huge workforce gap, and it is growing exponentially, particularly in areas like the skilled trades, for example. So that's an area where I think we need to think differently about upskilling people. How do we make things more accessible to people, more affordable? How do we look at a segment of people who are really hard workers but are not making the wages that they need to make to support their families and to more enjoy the gifts of our communities? So one thing, and you and I have talked about this before, a platform that NACCE has recently taken over as a charitable donation is the skillpoint with an e.com platform, which does just that. It connects people through a little 90-second quiz. What are you interested in? What are you good at? And then it will connect you by zip code to training programs, to scholarships, and to well-paid in-demand jobs. So I think it's kind of a unique resource. Now, I can tell you, as the CEO of NACCE, we're still trying to figure out how do we best deliver this to our members. So,
Right.
one of the things that we find in workforce programming and engaging with economic development is it's great to conduct pilots and to do research and find out, okay, what is the impact of this? We can talk about it and we can have some great case examples, and we've got some really good preliminary data. But what NACCE is doing is investing some funding and resources to really try to better understand through our member colleges what kind of an impact a technology platform can make. And then if we need to make adjustments, for example, we've already realized that we need to develop a pathways to entrepreneurship platform for the 80 careers. There are some that naturally lend themselves to creating a business much more so than others. So that's kind of the space that we're in right now, and really what I love about the work that you do with workforce.
Yeah, such a great point. And for the listeners, will want to tune in and make sure that with Skill Point, that if you haven't learned about it, that you visit the NACCE website to learn more about it. And again, with, that's a bit of innovation there, how we reimagine even the work that we're doing. And that's what you all are doing too. And I love that it's constant. So innovation often, we hear it time and time again that they go hand in hand with entrepreneurship. And as a leader in the field, what do you consider to be the essential skills necessary to foster a culture of innovation, whether that's at a community college level where you're thinking about the leaders or even with faculty or students? What do you think are just the key ingredients for having that kind of innovation community and culture?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I mean, I think culture is a really hard thing, especially
Yeah.
now, because you can, for example, have an aspirational culture that you want. And I've had this for years, effective collaboration and communication and empathy. But the reality is, in distributed workforces, you have different kinds of people. So you might
Yeah.
have that aspiration, but you realize, oh, we think we're communicating effectively, but people don't understand what we're doing. And so I think to answer your question about innovation, I would say simply it's about taking action. And that's the way I sort of put together entrepreneurial mindset, is the way that you think about things, the way you kind of plan for things. But an innovative culture is not one, in my opinion, where people just attend meetings and sit back,
Yeah.
or point the finger and say, oh, Dr. Moore should be doing this, others should be doing this. It's not that, sage on the stage kind of mentality. It's really rolling up your sleeves and saying, whether, you're the CEO or the managing partner, you've got to be willing to be authentic, whether, and that doesn't mean like, sharing everything about your struggles in
Right.
life, but being the person that you are, like showing up that way and really encouraging other people to, get outside their comfort zones, as you say,
Yes.
and think about, how can we accelerate growth faster? How can we include more people that might be disenfranchised from a
Yeah.
conversation or an opportunity on a college? So that's the way I look at innovation. It's really the action taking that we all need to do.
I love that because again, my exposure and my passion for NACCE and the work that happens there is that anyone can be an innovator. You can innovate at any position, at any level. It's the idea, and it's realizing that some people are going to do different things in that innovation. You might be the idea person, but then you might be next to the person and knows how to execute really well, and then that person takes it the next step of the way. So it's powerful to build community. And again, I love that NACCE has like this toolkit, if you will, of how to do that, and it's really great for the member colleges. There are, as we mentioned, some colleges that have not yet drunk the Kool-Aid yet, and we want them to relative to NACCE. But what do you think are some of the common challenges that leaders face or believe in promoting entrepreneurship at a college? And then how have you been able to kind of dispel that myth that, you know what, we're in it together. So what are your thoughts on that for those that haven't yet joined, and kind of the reason why, and dispelling that reason?
Yeah, and I think the reason why maybe colleges haven't joined, I place that sort of in the lap of NACCE ourselves. Like, I think we need to do a better job telling this story. We have a little hashtag we've been using recently, find yourself here. It's really that sense of belonging. And I go back to 2014, 10 years ago, when I went to my first NACCE conference. At that time, I was the vice president of institutional advancement. I was a fundraising machine, basically. And my grants writer, I had taken over the grants department just to oversee it, not to do all the grants. But
Mm-hmm.
our grants director said to me, Becky, you need to come to this national conference. It's unlike anything you've ever been to. And my response was, I didn't see myself there. I said, Phoenix sounds fantastic, but I have this event and I don't really think entrepreneurship is really for me. I'm not
Yeah.
against it, but I didn't see myself there. And she convinced me to go, and I went to my first NACCE conference, and I'd never been around people like that were just like this community of people that were just freely sharing things. They were celebrating things. They were laughing about things that didn't go well, but they were committed like wholeheartedly to advancing student success in the college. And just as life would happen, the president at that time had stepped down. So I was working on my dissertation. It was not the right time to look for a job, but I was like, you know what, I'll put my hat in the ring. And I think that could be a really amazing opportunity. So I guess my passion and drive is that people can start to see themselves in a space of entrepreneurship and innovation, even when things are not going well. We've had some tough times at NACCE, especially in the early days with funding, and even now taking over a technology platform. There's a lot of expenses to it. There's moving around of staff. It's we're having to really lean into that. But I think, had I not been exposed to that framework of entrepreneurship and also the community around it, of people like yourself and hundreds of other people that we know, that I know I could just get on the phone and call them I could say to you, like, I don't know what to do. Like, this is, I'm not familiar with this space. Do you have any suggestions for me? And
Right.
I think, every working professional, every human being should be lucky like we are to have that kind of a network. So that's kind of my passion for, continuing to move things forward, even though we have times in life where things are challenging and they don't work out well, or people don't understand us, or, at times they'll think we have an agenda to do X when that's not our agenda at all. It's just, that's what lifts us
Yeah.
up, is the network.
I love it. So the network, but also it's, as you mentioned, about pushing forward and moving forward in one of the creative ways. And it's really powerful. And I think it speaks to your leadership and what you've been able to accomplish over these 10 years is around collaboration. So when it comes to collaboration, I consider NACCE to be a real rock star. Could you share with our listeners, why collaboration is so critical to NACCE's success, along with sharing a couple of key partnerships that stand out in your mind that are going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, collaboration is like the hardest thing to do. It really is. Some people, they want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far and meaningfully, but messily, and sometimes, if that's even a word, you try to collaborate with other people. And I think that an analogy that Max Dupree used in his servant leadership books was playing jazz, right? So in that kind of a format, we're not each doing a solo, right? We're
Right.
coming together with different skills, different abilities, but we're making a very beautiful music together. And it takes practice. It takes, sets that don't go well and so on. So that's kind of how I think about collaboration and moving forward, and why it's important. But, knowing that if we equip ourselves with entrepreneurial mindset, and if we commit to taking innovative action, we are really going to advance together. And I think what we need to do is to continue to talk about these things. So as far as a couple of programs that we have going on, we have one called the Everyday Entrepreneur Program and Venture Fund. So we have 50 colleges right now that are engaging in working on their local communities. They have a pitch competition. So they have people from the community, students and community members that want to start a business, or
Right.
experiment with a business idea, that will pitch for a small amount of funding. And then it's not only just this initial seed money, but it's really empowering these colleges. There's 50 of them now, to think about what could be possible. Because in the fundraising world, I'm sure you know this from workforce development, those first dollars are always the hardest to get. And the people in the colleges participating with Everyday Entrepreneur maximize it. Like, it may only be $5,000, but you'd think it was $5 million. The amount of excitement and press release that they do around it, and I love to see the creativity for that. A related project that we have is funded through the Radcliffe Foundation up in Maryland, and it's the Pitch for the Skilled Trade. So this is not funding everyday entrepreneurs, the actual students or community members, but it's challenging teams of colleges to come up with creative ideas on how can they take a skilled trade program, like maybe it's construction, and embed entrepreneurship and innovation in it. And I know you've been involved in the past in some successful pitches. And what that does for a college is that the prizes are higher. It could be up to $50,000. And they come up with all kinds of ideas. Like, there was one college in northern Michigan that won last year, and they had this idea to 3D print tiny homes, which
Oh
is
yeah.
a really cool idea, but they had to try to figure it out, and they needed equipment. And lo and behold, they won. So they had to do a little bit more research on their project. But it just so happened a big company was moving into their town, and that's what they were doing, is 3D printing housing. So they've already not only gotten this grant award, but they've made a new connection with an industry partner that's relocating to their community. And I think that's really the vein, Kim, that you do so well, I think, in identifying opportunities and how those can lead to really impactful workforce solutions that can help not just the college, but it helps an entire community.
Well, it's because, just to do a point of just sharing and reflection with the listeners, for me, it was because of my first exposure to NACCE and understanding that I didn't have to have this special magical power to be considered an innovator, and I didn't have to be outside of an educational setting. I could be an entrepreneur, and that literally was the win that just catapulted what could be as a possibility. I recall us meeting. I recall participating in some workshops, gaining some information, and we literally went from a college that did not have an entrepreneurial footprint to a college that got honorable mention for Entrepreneurial College of the Year. And that says a whole lot about the system and support and resources that NACCE brings to bear and continues to encourage and inspire that you want to, reach new heights. So you are absolutely right about that, about the possibilities and the programming, and how it just spurs not only individuals, but communities and also institutions. So this gets us to the point, because it's actually a great segue about scaling. So, scaling is crucial for sustainability, and certainly in order to get the impact that we'd like to see with entrepreneurial initiatives. What strategies do you use or do you recommend for effectively scaling innovation and entrepreneurial programs? And I would say this is within the community college setting. What do you encourage? What are those one or two tips that you offer?
Yeah, I think, we've learned a lot about scaling probably over the last 7 or 8 years. One of our very impactful programs is funded through the Verizon Foundation, which is very generous. They do a lot of such good work around the country, not only with NACCE, but with other nonprofit partners to provide opportunities to young people that maybe didn't even have college or a STEM or anything like that on the horizon, and they get an opportunity to get immersed in this. I think that, along with several of our other programs, what we've learned about scaling is that you have to have good processes and a good model. And how did we learn that? By not having that. And it's hard
Right.
when you start something new. It's like starting a new business or doing anything. You kind of learn along the way. And what we learned is that having dedicated staff members to focus exclusively on that, and really driving quality, and if you have a partner that is willing to invest in that, and willing to walk alongside you, and you can develop that sense of trust when all of a sudden, anytime you deal with human beings, you're going to have problems, right?
Right.
Things that you don't expect. So I think really, again, getting back to what you were talking about, good communication. I think, one of the things I'm so proud about the NACCE staff is, these folks are so committed to their jobs, and they really feel that sense of ownership and service to the members. So I think, we all have things to learn. We're doing that internally at NACCE because, we like everybody else, have people that use different systems, and we're trying to figure out what's the best way to maximize our time. And I think just always knowing it's always going to be a challenge, but if you're always working at it and developing, good goals and good partners, and like to your example, when you really got started, and I remember those days, you literally would be like running down the hall because you'd have that enthusiasm, but then taking the time to really build the processes, and making sure that you have the right people in place. Sometimes you got to move people around. It
Yeah.
might be a wonderful person, but that's not the right job for them. And that is the
Correct.
hardest thing to do as a leader, is to say, I've got to make this change. And again, we already talked about change is hard for people, but
Yeah.
I think it's necessary. And the work that NACCE does with community colleges only works because we have this network of champions like yourself. I mean, that's our asset. Like, we've grown our financial assets, but if we don't have human beings that are working at these colleges, that love the students, that are willing to put themselves out there, we don't have anything. We have nothing.
Exactly.
So there's not a day that goes by that I don't really have gratitude, for that, and think about how can I better serve in this space. So yeah,
It
thank
really
you
is
for asking.
about the power of us, and again, I think NACCE just puts that front and center, and that comes from great leadership. So, what do you think about the innovation landscape? It's evolving. What do you think are going to be some of the biggest opportunities for innovation with community colleges in the coming year, and for NACCE?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the biggest opportunities is, if you look at the demographics of the workforce, you have Gen Xers like us, I'm guessing, and then you have a lot of people, who are baby boomers who are starting to retire, and then you have this this next generation of people that are
Yeah.
coming up. And I think the innovative opportunity is really not to look at sort of these younger generations when we have millennials, I think, are kind of outpacing everybody else in the workforce, but look at them with an entrepreneurial mindset. Like, what
Yeah.
kind of skills and talents do they bring to the table? Because, the youngest folks in the workforce now have this tremendous dedication to sort of, community and work life balance. And Kim, people like you and me that were the latch kids, that
Yeah.
had 5 jobs and, like, didn't use all our vacation time. Our generation is different than those.
Uh-huh.
And I think, NACCE can help um, college leaders at all levels, because we don't just work with presidents and chancellors. We work with administrators, we work with faculty, and we can bring people together to help solve those problems. And I think, I mentioned our greatest asset, but I think our role is really to be that convener. And if we can bring people from Wyoming together with people from California, and we can use frameworks like design thinking and some of these other frameworks that are out there, that just trust that if you sit with people and like what you did with me today, if you come up with good questions, if you can define a problem, there is absolutely nothing that we can't solve. So I'm excited about the future. I'm excited to learn more how we can engage some of these young folks who are
Yes,
they're going to be leaders,
they
in the
are.
future. And I think that's our obligation, to support them, to understand them, and figure out how can we best move forward together.
I love that how we're thinking about, the fact that there are 5 generations in the workplace
That's
now,
right.
and how do we make sure that everybody can bring their whole self, but at the same time be the very best and be pointing forward again, thinking, that next question, AI. Oh my goodness. The increasing integration of AI and technology in various sectors. How do you see that playing a part with the entrepreneurship education offered through NACCE?
Yeah, I mean, I see AI as a tool, and a powerful one. And I have to be honest, I've been using it more recently because I've been confronted with some interesting opportunities slash challenges. But I think with AI, what will never replace that is sort of the integrity of leaders. So you've
Mhm.
got to figure out, AI is not going away. I mean,
No.
anybody who thinks it is, I think is not dealing with reality. I
Yeah.
think it's like the internet, right? Like, I remember when I was a very young professional, and that people were trying to figure out like how to use the internet. I feel like we're back in that same
Yeah.
exact spot, but there are problems with it. There's issues on campus with, maybe people not using it in the
Yeah.
proper way. But I see it as, if we can, really focus on, the attributes of being good leaders, of, honesty, and, giving each other credit, and so
Yeah.
on. But like, I had an interview the other day, and interviewing a staff person. I wasn't
Oh,
quite prepared. So I only had 10 minutes. So I got onto Chat GPT and I said, are you familiar with XYZ job? And of course, yes. And then kind of prime the pump. And it came up with like 15 questions. Now, I didn't ask all of them, but some of them were really good questions. I could have sat there for an hour. I don't think that I would have come up with all of those. I know I wouldn't have come up with all those questions.
okay.
But as the leader, and honoring the person that had taken the time to be interviewed, I needed to figure out, like, how am I going to use my time? And that's just one example of how we can do this. I think there's a lot of opportunity for people that want to start businesses or a side hustle, to use AI to say, okay, what is the best if I want to set up like an aquaculture business? I'm thinking about
Yeah.
Florida. Like, what do I need to set up an aquaculture business? How much money do I need? How much money could I stand to make? I mean, literally, you can ask AI anything, and you have to be careful with the answer, because some of this stuff isn't accurate. But even stuff
Right.
we put out there, you could want to invite people to more of a formal occasion, and you just sort of have basic information. Please make this invitation more formal, but you can't just accept what it gives you. You've got to review it, and then you've got to kind of figure out how to lean into your integrity and credit it for what it is.
It's so great that NACCE is pointed in that direction, because you're right. I love that you have embraced and opened up the opportunity, but at the same time spoke about that balance, because you can. I mean, there is great efficiency that can be had by use of ChatGPT, but you better, make sure that you're doing the checks as well. So thank you for that. And I love how you're thinking about those, whether you're internal entrepreneurs, or external, where you're thinking about doing that small business, that here's another resource and here's how to use it. So when I think about, being cutting edge like NACCE is, what initiative is NACCE currently undertaking right now that you believe has the potential to be a game changer?
So there's a couple things. I think a lot of the things that NACCE does right now really well, like our quarterly magazine, our annual conference, we experimented this year with three different summits. And what we learned from that experience is that, in essence, we were kind of competing against ourselves. People can't go to multiple events and things like that. So we've come up with an initiative that we're hoping to roll out in 2025. The NACCE board is behind it, of this NACCE Academy, where it's going to be different than other kind of professional development academies, because it's going to not only include higher education leaders, it's going to include industry leaders and people from
I love
government,
that.
that really want to kind of engage together. And so as we were thinking about 2025, we thought we had tremendous success being on the campus of community colleges. So we thought, okay, so we learned that. So we were not going to compete against ourselves and drive ourselves crazy trying to do three summits. We're going to do one, and what we're playing around with is really the theme of pathways to prosperity. It aligns with our strategic plan. It really aligns with where NACCE is headed. So it's not just entrepreneurship in the classroom. It's also on campus, it's in the community, and it's a variety of stakeholders. It's not just the people that teach entrepreneurship in the business school. It is advancement leaders, like I was, workforce development leaders like you are and were in the community college. And it's other leadership. So we sort of bring together that crazy quilt along with industry
Yeah.
people and foundations, to kind of co-create these new solutions. So that's what we're working on together. We've got a couple of our very generous donors that we're going to be having a retreat with here soon in a couple weeks. One last thing I just wanted to share that I'm really, really proud of all of our NACCE partners and board and staff, is that over the last 7 years as a nonprofit association, we were able to contribute back over $30 million in
Oh my
awards to,
gosh.
yeah, it's a lot, to our NACCE members. So those came through some of our large partnerships and some emerging partnerships where we're actually able to provide sub-grant awards to colleges and to faculty and leaders. So
Wow.
I think that kind of differentiates us too, is that sometimes to scale and take that innovative action, you don't need a fortune, but it is helpful to have a little bit of funding, because everybody works hard, and you want to be able to, support people that are willing to put in time above and beyond, their regular jobs.
That's huge. That's again, when you think about different organizations and associations across the country, and all very well meaning, but it's powerful when the organization that you join, certainly it's for education and growth, also reinvest back in you, and you get that membership investment back many times over by just, again, and not to mention knowledge and growth and all these other opportunities. So thank you again for your leadership, both with the board, certainly with the team. I love the team. I know the team do a phenomenal job of bringing resources and helping you to access the resources on top of that. So last question, but I want you to know the virtual door is always open for you, my friend, to come back and share the good news and good works of NACCE. So it goes back to leadership and just, our own journeys that we take. What's been the best advice that you ever received that really has, from your vantage point, played into your leadership approach?
Yeah, I think the best bit of advice, and this goes back to 2018 when I was working with a business coach at the time. His name was Bill. And I was at that time trying to move the NACCE office and my family and myself to a better location. And, I would say to him, oh, I need to figure this out. I need to figure that out. And he said, oh, you will. But he'd say, what's the most important um, aspect of being a leader? And at that time, I was like, I was in the mindset of, having a good, balance sheet of, having,
Right.
employees on board and that kind of thing. And I struggled with that question. And, eventually we kind of came to the conclusion that the most important quality that you can have is integrity. And I really believe that, because sometimes integrity means that you have to stand up to hard things. And
Yes.
I think, like, at this stage of my life, I am so leaning into integrity because I just feel that, we have an opportunity, we have trust within the system. And I just want to make sure that, when I'm doing things, and nobody gets it right all the time, but that I'm coming from a place, whether it's dealing with funders or dealing with my board or dealing with uh, colleagues like you, that I'm like really thinking about how can I do good and say the right thing. And sometimes saying the right thing is the hard thing. And then
Right.
sometimes, the situation will not be good. So kind of exiting myself temporarily from a situation so I don't say something that won't, be helpful. And
Right.
that might sound a little confusing, but I think that integrity is something that you see people lose it. And
Yeah.
I see that, we all see that in the news. And that's why I think for all young people, emerging leaders and leaders like us, and I know you're like that because you and I have had some deep conversations. If you hold on to your integrity, that's everything. It is
It
absolutely
is.
everything. It is more
It
important than your
is.
resume. It's more important than your paycheck. It's more important than anything. And so that would be my piece of advice.
I love that. And for the listeners, I'm certain that you all can relate to that. There are things that you just can't put a price tag on, and that maintaining and upholding your integrity is absolutely one of those. So, we are at the end of another Workforce Insight podcast. I am so glad that you chose to join us today. Again, remember our great speaker, great conversationalist, Becky Corbin, NACCE, and an organization that you certainly want to be a part of and learn more about. Please be sure to like us, share it, and of course, subscribe. And if you haven't told all your friends, please make sure you do that as well. Until the next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Workforce Insight podcast, powered by Envision More Consulting Group, where we bring your bold visions to life. Remember to subscribe, share, and stay tuned for more insights on navigating the world of workforce and leadership. Until the next time, be bold, be great, and let's innovate.